Restaurant Unstoppable, episode 719 with Vaughan Dugan.
With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, Vaughan Dugan. My man, Vaughan, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Absolutely. Probably the most unstoppable I've felt in a long time.
Dude, with a name like Vaughan Dugan, how can you be stopped? That's pretty
I appreciate
solid. So Vaughan Dugan is a serial entrepreneur. He started his own lawn mowing company at the age of 10. Since then, he's opened tons of companies, more than I can list right now, but the ones that matter to us. In 2016, founder of Pizza Fusion. He's now the partner at the Subculture Restaurant Group. He's a co-owner of Kapow Noodle Bar and the Dubliner. And Dugan is working with your wife right now on an e-commerce website where you guys are selling, it's called Dugan and Dame, where you're selling like spices and olive oils and bitters and things of that nature. Yeah. Then lastly, we just had Danielle Rossi on the show, and you're partnering with Danielle Rossi on launching Ground Zero Virtual Hospitality Boot Camp. You got a lot going on, man. I can't wait to dive into how you're managing all these things, but let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
Oh, man, I found one I came across the other day that could not be more perfect for what's going on right now in the industry. Difficult roads often lead to beautiful destinations.
Ooh, why that quote? Why is that singing to you right now?
Like all of us in the industry, I mean, this has been probably one of the darkest moments for a lot of us. There's a lot of uncertainty. I think I even went into a pretty dark place the first couple of weeks, not knowing what was going to happen, if I was going to be able to pay my mortgage and pay my bills and, keep these restaurants and businesses and people employed. And as we're starting to see a lot of the things lifted, I see the grass is much greener. The sun is starting to come out. There certainly is a beautiful destination ahead of us, and everything's going to be okay.
I'm happy to hear you say that. And maybe we can save why you feel like that later on in the conversation when we get to that point chronologically. But where does it make sense to start telling your story, man? I know you started young. And you've opened more businesses I can count on my hands. I don't know which ones you want to talk about.
I've closed equally as many. So,
well, I'm sure there's so many lessons in all this. So let's just bring it back to like when you knew you were an entrepreneur. Take it there.
So the story my mom tells, and this actually came, I was at a party one night and my mom started telling a story about how I was about 10 years old and the neighbor came over to the house, started knocking on the door. And the neighbor said, is your son the guy kid that's cutting grass next door? And my mother, of course, like any mother would do, she's like, oh man, what did he do now?
Yeah, it depends. What did he do?
Exactly. So he's like, I just got to let you know, your son's going to be okay. He's got about 5 or 6 other kids from the neighborhood helping out, cutting everyone else's lawn, kind of pointing everyone in the direction. So I was either going to be a really big kind of bossy guy, or I kind of had the intuition early on to leverage I don't know, just leverage the rest of the kids in the neighborhood and kind of make it work and turn into a business at an early age.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things I've seen, and one of the things I was hoping we would talk about today, and I'm happy it's coming out of the gates bright and early, this idea of just being able to work through people and to be able to attract onto yourself other people and just to manage all those relationships and those partnerships. And it seems like even to this day, you got partnerships up the wazoo, man. Like in everything you're doing, it seems like you're working with other people. And I mean, it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart right now as I'm growing Restaurant Unstoppable, like that, how to balance these relationships and how to bring on partners. What is the secret to that?
I was working with a kind of like a mentor, like a life coach for a while. And he had said something to me one day that stuck with me. And it's actually a quote that I use all the time, and I have to give him credit for it. But there's no bad business with good people. And it really has been sort of my guiding, force in everything that I do. It's just trying to align myself with really good people, whether it's people that are working for you, with you, your business partners, it doesn't matter. Even like technology partners, it comes down to the service and support. And it's not just how pretty it looks. Sometimes is someone going to pick up the phone on the other end? So I like to kind of live by that mantra as well, that, I just like to surround myself with phenomenal people.
There's no bad business with good people, man. That's great. And I mean, at the end of the day, and I think my listeners, people who know me well enough know what I'm about to say. Business is all relationships. It's all that is. And all money is a tool to measure those relationships and to track those relationships. So absolutely. I 100% agree. There's no bad business with good people. We forget that it's all about those relationships sometimes. So when, like, I know you had a lot going on from the time you were a young kid to 2006. Where were you in 2006? How old were you in 2006? I'm just curious.
I was in my early 30s, I guess.
Okay. So I know you had businesses that you built and sold for millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Is it worth hovering over any of those experiences? What is it? Where does it make sense to stop and hover in your story?
I think for me, it was just, I went to Northeast University. I went there to attempt to play hockey and some other stuff, and a 0.0 GPA didn't really impress my parents very well, but I did join a fraternity. So when I came
Were you
down,
good at hockey at least?
I thought I was great at hockey, but obviously not that good.
Okay. Keep going.
So anyways, when I came down to Florida, I started a chapter of my fraternity, and very early on, I found myself at Kinko's designing flyers for my fraternity. So that turned into a business for me. Really early on, I was doing graphic design, designing nightclub flyers. So back in the early 90s, we were one of the first kind of full color, 24-hour turnaround printers for the hospitality industry, everything from nightclubs. That was our primary business. A lot of hospitals, rack cards, things like that.
What year was this?
1994.
Okay.
95.
So that was really the first break for you into the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
Helping market and promote these events and these. Okay.
I was a nightclub promoter back then too. So I'd always been more of on the marketing side of the business.
Got you. Any key lessons or key mentors during these early years for you during this come up? People that we need to highlight and share.
Ooh, early on, no, I wasn't mature enough back then to listen to anyone, which is probably the best advice I could have given anyone, in hindsight. Not really, we were just winging it. We were young. We were in our 20s. We were having the time of our life. And the fact that we were dealing with the hospitality industry, we were flying all over the country. Our main customer base were nightclubs. So that was what we were doing on the weekends. And we were having a good time in the early days. We were making a lot of money too, and spending it just as fast. Another valuable lesson.
Yeah. So, I think the lesson's pretty obvious there. But say it out loud, like really break it down.
Well, just like we're all going through right now, you never know what's on the road ahead. You need to plan. You need to be smart with your money, make investments with your money, and just, the rainy day is going to happen, and the rainy day could last for 3 months.
So what are the things you're doing with your money today, for example, that you weren't doing then?
For me, it's more about diversification, and again, another lesson that didn't work out for me. I've got Dugan and Dame. We sell, our primary customer are restaurants and bars. So we sell tonics and bitters. That's a fairly new startup with my wife. And as soon as this all happened, we lost, that faucet turned right off. I started a new crowdfunding platform within the education space. The education space came to a screeching halt all at the same time. So as much as I thought I was doing the right thing by diversifying, with my businesses, it kind of backfired on me a little bit, but thank God I had some money in the tank.
So this company that we're talking about isn't Stellar Concepts and Design Inc., is it? It is?
It is. Yeah.
Okay. So you were doing that until 2007.
Yep. Right up until I started Pizza Fusion.
Okay. What was the reason for leaving this concept? It sounds like you were doing good. Were you just over it? Do you want to move on to different things?
I think it was a combination of everything. Like Pizza Fusion, I started as a side project with one of my college buddies. It was a passion project. It was an organic pizza concept. So it was very much aligned with kind of our core values and the way we were living and eating at the time. And it took off. Thankfully at the time, it really took off like gangbusters. And I chose to dedicate all of my time to that. I didn't think it was fair to my partners at Stellar to stick around because I was an absentee owner at that point, whereas that was my full-time job for 10 years.
Yeah. So paint the picture of starting Pizza Fusion. Was your friend just going on this journey on his own and you saw potential? Or did you guys collaborate together from the very beginning, or like
we collaborated together from the very beginning? He was actually one of my clients at Stellar. He was in real estate. He was one of my print clients, design clients at the time. So we were doing a lot of postcard work for him and his company. And he was fed up with his business. He was dealing with a lot of government funded housing and things like that. So it was kind of like a hamster wheel for him. And he was just
tired of his business.
Real estate. He was in like low income real estate. He would buy large properties, Section 8 housing, things like that.
We have a print guy and a realtor opening a pizza place.
You nailed it. Yeah.
Awesome.
No business doing that either.
Where did you guys start? Like, how do you, like, with no experience, like, what did that process look like?
So I think, like a lot of businesses, you always think you can do things better than everybody else. There's a lot of ego involved, but at the time, it was more of an opportunity to capture a growing trend at the time. Inconvenient Truth came out. Everybody was eating organic. People started driving Priuses. It was sort of the right place at the right time, and it actually did align with how we lived our life, eating organic food, very clean eating, going to the gym, trying to save the planet at the time. We were all eco warriors, and Inconvenient Truth could not have come out at a more perfect time for Pizza Fusion. We didn't open Pizza Fusion because of Inconvenient Truth, but it just so happened it came out while we were opening it. So we started as a 800 square foot location in Deerfield Beach, Florida, had our second location under construction in 4 months.
Wow.
And then our third partner was in franchising prior to Pizza Fusion. So he kind of showed us that business model, and it seemed to work for us. And the rest is history. You opened up 50 units in about 4 years.
We're back, and man, we got a lot to unpackage. You just kind of gave us a huge aerial view of what Pizza Fusion was and is, but let's really slow it down and pull back the layers and try to pull some nuggets out of this conversation. Okay, back to this idea of two people with no real restaurant experience opening a pizza place. How did you guys go through that process of having to know or learning what you needed to do, the basics, just to open the doors? I mean, you were an entrepreneur, so you had some basics there.
Yeah, and I think, I hate using the word foodie, but at the time, I mean, that's what we did. I was out every night of the week eating and drinking, and I loved food. I still, obviously, to this day, I'm very passionate about food. So I was a student of the industry. I was out. I knew what was trending. I was following every industry publication prior to even do this, because being in the print side of hospitality, you're getting all these publications, you're seeing what the trends are. So we were always on top of, the pulse of the industry. So it was just a matter of, again, just kind of being a student of it and educating yourself, trying to learn and be better than anyone else that's working for you. So I started in the kitchen.
Okay. Where were you focusing your education? You said you were constantly learning. What topics were the most interesting to you at this time?
For me, it was, at the time when we first started, it was more about corporate culture. It was about, I wanted to make change with the business. And we thought with this kind of eco-centric organic pizza concept, we were giving health insurance to our dishwashers. We were driving hybrid cars to deliver pizzas. We really thought we were going to change the industry, because as we dove into it, we realized how kind of toxic and taxing the industry can be and how wasteful it could be. So from a sustainability standpoint, that's kind of really what we hung our hat on at the time.
Yeah. So you said at first that the thing that really kind of absorbed your attention, this education that you were giving yourself, was corporate culture. What were the big lessons you learned about corporate culture and how to create change with the culture?
I think just, first and foremost, you just got to treat everybody with respect. We wanted to take care of everybody, from the dishwasher to the person answering the phones. That customer journey starts from the time they answer the phone to the time the pizza's delivered. And we wanted to kind of really hone in on that. So it was more of a people thing for us. We wanted to spend more time hiring the right people, vetting those people out. And that's kind of where I really started focusing on, guys like Howard Schultz from Starbucks and Danny Meyer. Those became my mentors by way of books and things like that. And I love that part of the business.
You guys are fans of Starbucks. We literally just interviewed Howard Bihar. His episode's going live right after yours, as a matter of fact. I don't know if you know Howard or of Howard. But
I know of Howard, yeah.
Yeah, man. Oh, great story. Just a little teaser there for our listeners. So going a little bit deeper. So it's all about the people. It's all about respect. It's all about creating these experiences. Going further with corporate culture, it sounds like you knew the significance of knowing your why, but this is far before the whole Simon Sinek wave of start with why. Where did you learn the significance of having general purpose, and how did knowing what your general purpose was affect your ability to attract onto yourself others?
It's a great question. I think I'm going to go back to when I started working with my mentor. His name is Bob Edelman. He helped me through a lot of junk at the time. We were, again, being young, being immature, not necessarily believing in myself early in my career too. That was a huge part of it. And I think once I started working through some of that, I'll tell a really quick story. We hired a very young manager at Pizza Fusion at my first store. I created the recipes. I did all of that. And I came in one day and I had red onions on a recipe, and the manager was showing off in front of the rest of the crew, and he was cutting up white onions. And I was like, well, wait a second, you're supposed to put red onions on that. And he was like a 19-year-old kid telling me what to do. And he's like, nah, I'm going to put white onions on it. And I was like, okay, I guess you know better. You were a pizza manager for 5 years. I wasn't. So I guess I really don't have any business. And I went home that night and I called my mentor up, and I was kind of hemming and hawing a little bit. And he was like, what do you think he's doing right now? I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, do you think he's home right now worrying about onions? And I was like, no. He's like, this is your business. Go back and put the red onions on the pizza. So it was kind of that little kick in the butt that got me on my way of being a little more confident and kind of leading with confidence as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned something earlier that I think is really important too. When you were first starting, like you wanted to be like, you wanted to do everything to know the business. Like you didn't start, I think it's important that we start from the beginning working in our business so we understand the business. So for whatever reason, we can't be dependent on one person, right? So if we have we have somebody hired and they're like the technician, the pizza maker, and they decide that, you know what, red onions just aren't for me, I'm out of here. And they leave, but you don't know how to make pizzas, then you're screwed, right? So you started doing the grunt work. Why is it so important to know how to work in the business, not just rely on other people?
I think you need to. I think the only way to be successful is to know, where you're going to have challenges, where you're going to come up against roadblocks. I don't want to say I'm ever smarter than anybody in the room, but I want to at least know when they're telling me the truth. So I'd love to get my hands dirty too. My crew now at Kapow, they'll tell you, like, when we have all staff cleanups and whatnot, I'm the first one to go in the bathroom on my knees and start scrubbing the floor.
What does that communicate when you do that?
It's as soon as I'm done, you can hear them, like, the level of respect. And that's not why I do it. I just do it to lead by example. That look,
yes.
And my partner's the same way. Like we roll up our sleeves kind of guys, not afraid to get dirty. My partner's in my West Palm Beach location right now, repairing a door. And we have people to do that. It's just that we're getting ready to open in that location and he wants to be there and be present. And I think being present is so important in any business.
Yeah. And I'm always reminded of the words from one of my past guests and friends, multiple past guests, Rudy Mick, who says, you got to paint the picture of perfection. Rudy. Yeah. Love Rudy. So you got to paint that picture of perfection. You got to give your people an aiming point. And when you go in there and you clean the toilet to your standard, then that is now the new standard. And you got to go in there and show people every once in a while. You don't have to do it all the time, but you have to be willing to get in there to show them that you're willing to do it and to set that standard. It's really important.
I'm glad you brought up Rudy. I mean, like, he was another one that I never worked with him directly, but I was coming across him in my early days of Pizza Fusion by way of Paul Barron from Foodable TV and Fast Casual. Like Rudy was one of the early guys that was talking about culture and how that culture within the restaurant was so important. So he's been doing this, before anybody, in my opinion.
Yeah. I was literally just on the phone with him the other day. A huge fan of Rudy. He's a great dude, knows his stuff. You mentioned mentors. You mentioned that you're just able to get on the phone and call people. How significant was having these people? Who was your mentor and what experience did he have?
I had a few. I have to, Paul Barron was one of them early on. He kind of took me.
How did you get Paul Barron in your quarter with your first location?
Like I said, we were really fortunate. Pizza Fusion was launched onto the national stage because of a lot of the sustainability efforts. We were one of the first fully sustainable restaurants. I was invited to be on the National Restaurant Association's Green Advisory Board back in the early 2000s or whatever when I started. So I was rubbing elbows with a lot of people that I normally would never have had the opportunity to. It was really awkward for me. I was like the kid with tattoos that had 2 pizza places, and I'm sitting in a room with people from Darden and Brinker and Starbucks. And so it was, but Paul, again, he really, thankfully took a liking to me and saw a lot in what we were doing. I'd have to say he was probably, whether he knows it or not, he probably doesn't know it. He was one of my early mentors. And through him and him interviewing me early on and putting me on panels, and it allowed me the opportunity to speak on other panels and meet other people. Aaron Novoshin, again, was another one from the Culinary Edge, who is someone who I used to be able to pick up the phone. I just talked to him the other day by email. And locally, you had Danielle on your show. Danielle Rossi's become a dear friend of mine recently. We've always known each other, cross paths, but she's somebody who I don't think I would have made it through this most recent challenge if it wasn't for someone like her in our local market. She's so bright, and she's probably one of the smartest people I know in the industry right now.
What was it that she did that? How did she help you through it? We're getting a little current time, but I'm willing to go in here.
She's just, she's certainly probably one of the most intelligent people in my opinion when it comes to studying the industry. She was up to date every second of every day. She was keeping me up to date, and just having that, she was a shoulder for me too. Like, what's going on? What are you doing? And to have that type of kind of camaraderie is so important. And there's several operators in the South Florida market that we're on group texts, and we're really, really trying to help each other through this.
I love this. I love this, man. It's lonely at the top. It does not have to be. You don't have to be alone. You can reach out to other entrepreneurs and restaurateurs within your community. And as a matter of fact, it's those people who are willing to reach out and to talk and to collaborate locally and nationally that are always at the top. And another thing, and it's an overused saying, but it's so true. You are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Absolutely.
Right? And you're going out there, 2 locations, surrounding yourself with the gardens. Say it for me. Gardens?
I
don't know. What's that?
What was it?
The big dogs. You're surrounding yourself with the big dogs back in the day, you know, and you are like, and you instantly rise to that level. And being willing to talk to other restaurateurs within your community is so important. We're hosting multiple masterminds. I just want to throw it out there. If you're somebody who hasn't taken the leap to collaborate, to talk to other restaurateurs, we want to teach you how to do that. So feel free to let me know. Shoot me an email, Eric@Restaurant Unstoppable. If you're interested in doing more of this, we'll teach you how. Back to your story. One thing that I still want to get from you more is this idea of collaboration and partnerships. Because from your very first location, you went into a partnership. What do we need to know about setting up these partnerships? What were you doing in the very beginning? Or you should have been doing that.
That's actually a really, really good question. I think all of my mistakes that I've made have been through bad partnerships and not trying to educate myself on those partnerships, whether it's through legal advice, through some mergers, acquisitions, financing rounds that I went through early on at Pizza Fusion. I made a lot of mistakes. And again, a lot of it's because I just didn't know what I didn't know.
But didn't you know that you know now?
I try and I trust everybody, but I like I have a lot of legal help now to help me navigate contracts and things that I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
So I take the advice of professionals to guide me through things, but you also have to be guided through your instinct as well. Your gut instinct is a real thing. And I'd rather be wrong myself than doubt myself and make a bad decision because of someone else's advice.
So what was it about your partnership? Who was your partner at Pizza Fusion?
So my partner at Pizza Fusion, I didn't have any issues with him as we went through some early rounds of financing that I didn't, I was very young, very immature, didn't know how to navigate contract language. I didn't understand any of, secondary rounds of financing. I didn't understand toxic debt. I didn't understand a lot, so at the bottom of the ninth, we had about $4 million in capital on the table. It was pulled away from us, whether it was for part of the show or not, because there wasn't enough gray hair in the room. And that's a quote from one of the board members of the company that invested. And I just said, look, I really don't care. I want to see my baby across the finish line, famous last words from an entrepreneur. I was like, listen, I don't care if you put some gray hair in as long as we get there together, and not realizing that there's always sharks in the water. But I will say that if it wasn't for that fundraising, that financing, we wouldn't be where we were at the time. So double-edged sword. I just would have been a little more careful with looking at contracts and understanding what the repercussions of it were.
Yeah, Pizza Fusion went. Is there something in the story that we're missing? Like how did not knowing these sharks were in the water hurt you?
I did take a back seat. There was some senior level management that, I think mismanaged the company. And it was at that time, while the company, in my opinion, was rolling backwards very quickly, that I decided to open up Kapow Noodle Bar and join my partners at Subculture. And after 2 years, the management group at Pizza Fusion kind of put their hands in the air, threw the keys back on the table. And I made the best go at it as possible to try and put it all back together, but it was kind of a day late and a few $1 million short.
So if you could go back in time, knowing what you know now, and could have made 1 or 2 different decisions, would you have made, or what would you have done differently?
I think, again, I would have probably stood up for the fact that I was the best person for the job to lead the company at the time. I would have found another investor or investment group that would have believed in me and the vision. It was painful to watch this really cool company that I think was changing the industry, or at least, positioning itself to change the industry, started stripping all that stuff away with the new management. There was no, why organic, why hybrid cars? And next thing you know, you're a Domino's or a Pizza Hut, not that that's bad, but for me, that wasn't what I wanted to do.
So they're focused on the bottom line.
Yep.
and margins basically.
And they weren't hospitality guys either. They were learning by way of a revolving door of consultants. So, we were spending a fortune on consultants so they could educate themselves and at that point, baby was already in the corner. So I was starting a new career. And
Gotcha. So, looking down at your timeline, Pizza Fusion, you were a part of until 2019, according to your LinkedIn account. So you went over to Kapow in 2011, correct?
That's right. Yep.
And that's when you were partnering with, I got my notes all over the place right now. You were partnering with Rodney, was it? I think I remember seeing.
Yeah, Rod Mayo and Scott Freilich.
Okay, so take us to this point. Like, when did these conversations for Noodle Bar start?
I'd been friends with Scott and Rodney for 15 or so years. They both they've got a couple of restaurants and nightclubs down in South Florida. I was one of their obviously partners. I did all their printing, design, and that stuff. So the two guys that I looked up to, they took their staff to the Keys every year. They treated everybody with respect, and it was perfectly aligned with how I saw Pizza Fusion. So when I knew I was going to make a jump and get into business with anybody, it was people that shared kind of my same vision and my same core values to run the business. And it was certainly them. It was an easy kind of transition for me too.
What was the vision?
For them, they'd already been doing it together for a while. So they'd already established Subculture Restaurant Group. I was sort of the new kid in the group. But it was, David Chang was popping open Mamafuko's, and we saw that as a big trend. There was a huge void in the Southeast for those types of concepts. So we decided to open up Kapow Noodle Bar in Boca Raton, Florida in 2011.
So now you have this experience of Pizza Fusion under your belt, interacting with different people, getting this idea of what you didn't know, right? You're going into a new opportunity. What did that look like? What were you doing differently with this partnership that you didn't do in the previous?
Well, early on, it was communication. We were three guys that shared the same vision. We shared the same values, and we were having fun, and we were doing it together, and we were making all the decisions together. It wasn't a board, and it was good to get out from behind a board of directors and a CEO. And, that was another reason why I wanted to leave Pizza Fusion, because that really wasn't something that was aligned with me anymore in my life. I didn't like wearing suits to board meetings to discuss organic pizza. But Rodney and Scott are just two phenomenal human beings. They're always doing the right thing by the community. And I was like, I want to work with these guys. So when we started, it was just like this phenomenal, just like any relationship in the beginning. And it's maintained that over the course of 9 years, sorry.
So how do the people in this partnership complement each other? What lanes were you in?
Scott, Scott's very operations focused. Rodney's like kind of the creative guy. I mean, he's always got a vision. He goes in and he'll come in and like design part of the restaurant, and he's always got a vision for the creative side and for the conceptual side. He's got a brain like I've never seen, when it comes to the creative side. What I brought into it was kind of a mix of all of it. I had seen it all building Pizza Fusion. So for me, it was bringing systems and procedures and stuff into I don't want to call it a mom and pop environment, but it was much more of a loose kind of mom and pop company structure. I wanted to bring in structure, technology, things that we could do to help run our business more efficiently, so that we can kind of, work on growing our business instead of working in the business. Okay.
So how many other operations did Rodney and Scott have before you came on board?
I think at the time there was about 10.
Okay. So when you came on, when you joined them, what was the agreement looking like? Was this your baby and they were kind of like there to support you, or was it more like we're all in this together? I mean, they had 10 other operations going.
Yeah.
So.
And there's different ownership structure with every single one. It was like Rodney kind of started Subculture Restaurant Group with a nightclub 33 years ago in West Palm Beach, and it's just kind of grown ever since. No, we were all in this together financially. We were invested personally, financially. So we were all in this together. Once the creative vision of the restaurant kind of took shape, that's where Scott and I kind of took more involvement in the day-to-day operations. Me more on the marketing side, Scott was more on the kind of the operations side. We're both super, super hands-on, and Rodney was just like, he's probably had 3 more concepts he was working on at the time.
So you said that the way you guys set up the business, or like the structure of the business, like yep. How is this business organized? How do you separate the different partnerships? Because I'm sure they have partners all over the place in all their businesses. What are they doing to structure and to isolate those different businesses and, what's the business entity, I guess?
I think to start from the top down, the one thing that's changed a lot since I came on board, and I'm certainly not taking credit for it, but I think it certainly helped drive things in that direction. But there is, a CFO for the company now. There is kind of an accounting team. There's all of the professional services that are the engine of kind of the keeping a restaurant financials in check and, letting us get back to running the restaurants. But outside of that, every single restaurant has its own personality, has its own identity. But we all operate under, for the most part, standard SOPs and whatnot. We all use the same software. Kapow is sort of the black sheep a bit, because I'm always the one trying to test new technology and new platforms and POS systems. We were the first ones to bring in Toast. We were the first ones to bring in some HR software and some scheduling software. So, I like to be able to, I live in Florida. I want to go to the beach and have a cocktail and look at my phone and run my business from my phone when I'm enjoying that cocktail, even though my wife would tell you I should be enjoying the beach.
So real quick, the one thing I'm looking for is how are you organizing the business in a way? Is it a LLC series?
Yes.
Is it okay?
So yeah, no, we're an S corp. We're separate. We're governed by our own operating agreement. Kapow is completely separate from the group. We make decisions just for the group. So we are an S corp. I've set everything up as LLCs recently, help me govern things a little bit easier. But the two Kapows are both S corps, and they're governed internally by our operating agreement.
Okay, cool. And I love this idea of outsourcing the accounting and getting. So when you were talking, I couldn't help but think of our past guest, and he's been on the show a couple times too, Cameron Mitchell from Mitchell Restaurants out of Columbus, Ohio. And the way that he says it is, and what you were saying that made me think of this, is this idea of every different concept or every different restaurant has its own feel, its own brand, but the systems internally are the same. And it's that idea that when you figure out the systems, right, you have this chassis, and the chassis, the engine, the parts of the chassis are all the same. Then you just put an external shell on it. That's the soul, the character, the brand. What are some of the secrets we need to know, or what when taking this approach and trying to create consistency throughout multiple brands? What are there any tricks to the trade? Is there any guidance you can give us in that regard?
No, that's actually a really, really good question too.
Thank you.
I think a lot of it has to do, for us, Kapow is the technology tester. So within all the organizations, we don't try and roll something out without putting it through the ringer, beating it up, from a system standpoint. And then again, it's just hiring really good management that can enforce it so that it is consistent. What we've done recently is we're taking management from one concept and putting them through some management shifts throughout the other brands, so that they can get an idea and make sure that we are doing everything consistently, whether it's closing out at the end of the day, whether it's hiring, onboarding, offboarding, whatever it is. I think those things, to your point, and that's a really good analogy too, and I didn't think about it. I'm not a big NASCAR fan, but it is just like that. And the skin of the car and the driver, what makes that brand different, but the engine is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And I think it's just having consistency is so important, and sticking to your guns, seeing things through. I think I've seen a lot of other restaurateurs bail on stuff just because they got fed up with it. They didn't understand it. They didn't want to kind of put the work into it, which, as you know, a lot of technology, it's good info in, good info out, bad info in, bad info out. If you're not doing the work, people like to blame software, but it's usually a user error.
It's a tool. You're not swinging the hammer right. The blunt side is supposed to hit the nail, not the pointy side, man. So what are you? So I love this idea of taking managers and testing your systems by moving them around. Theoretically, if your internal systems are the same, you should be able to plug in and put your managers everywhere, because you might have to learn new menu items and stuff like that, but theoretically things should be the same. But what I want to lean into is this idea of where do you find this discipline to stick with the change? How do you do that? What's your secret? This is more like a personal thing, I feel internal discipline.
I've learned this from my wife, and it's not necessarily discipline, but I think for us, we're starting to listen to our staff a lot more, and we're bringing them into the conversation. So we're not just shoving new technology and new ideas down their throat, we're bringing them into the conversation as early as possible. Obviously, a lot of opinions is not good all the time, but we want them to know we're thinking about improving the business, making their jobs easier. What do you think about this? Would you guys be willing to adopt something like this? Because then when you do roll it out, you've got early adoption by the staff, and those are the ones that resist it the most in the beginning. So that's usually what sets you up for failure. So we're talking to them a lot more, and I think it's really important. I think you should be talking to them anyway, but we're getting them involved in those conversations. And to roll back really quick, going into these other concepts we've seen where other brands are doing it better, and we're learning from our mistakes and other businesses and other brands.
So the big takeaway for me in what you said is making your team be a part of the change, making them feel like they taking a little bit of ownership over it. How exactly is it that you do that? Is it just saying, hey, we're thinking about doing this? What do you think? Are you just putting it out there, or are you letting them take control of the project altogether? How do you get them to buy in? What are you doing exactly?
I think transparency. I think you need to let them know why you're doing it, how it's going to improve your business. And even if it's like, look, I think you guys are stealing, and we have to put systems in place. It's just to prove us wrong. Thankfully, that's not an issue in any of the concepts we have that we know of. But and again, I think communicating clearly and being transparent is a very, very powerful thing for this industry.
And what exactly is it that you're communicating? The benefit of the new tool, or how do you communicate that?
Yeah, I think everything, like why you're using it. I think it's important to also let them know what's going to be in it for them. It's always like what's in it for us first. Obviously, we're trying to run a business and we're trying to be more efficient as a business. But we need to let them know like how it's going to help them too. Is it going to keep them healthier? Is it going to make them more money? Is it going to allow them to get to a guest table faster because they weren't doing X, with an abacus and a pen and a crayon? So it's important to let them know why it's going to be beneficial for them.
So how many Kapow Noodle Bars are there right now?
There's 2 right now, one in Boca Raton, one in West Palm Beach. Right before kind of the whole COVID thing hit everybody, we were actually identifying 2 new locations, one in Fort Lauderdale and one in Delray Beach. So hopefully we get to pick up where we left off, and I'm pretty confident we'll get back there sooner than later.
So I noticed with your first business, your first pizza business, or your first restaurant, Fusion, you went from 1 to 2 locations in 4 months. When did you open your second location with Kapow?
That was 7 years later.
Did you learn anything like that you can scale too fast, or is it just a different concept or different model in general where you're not looking to go that route?
I think it was a different model because we funded the restaurant ourselves. We didn't get any outside investors. It took us 5 years to get to Kapow to the point where it is now. We've got an amazing team now. We've got an amazing chef. We've got an amazing, beverage director. Everything, the people and systems are now in place to replicate it, to where if we go seek outside investors, we're calling the shots. We're the ones leading the conversation, which kind of goes back to Pizza Fusion, where I was in a position of, weakness. So it was a disadvantage for me at the time because of my immaturity or lack of knowledge, I should say. So.
Okay. So I love this idea of with Fusion, you were kind of vulnerable. Like you're putting yourself, you're kind of just like, I don't want to say begging for help, but just trying to get help wherever you could, and didn't really have the filter developed yet to know what was good help and bad help. And whereas with Kapow, now you have experience. Now you're seasoned. Now now you're building an asset, and you have this asset. You have this thing of value, and you're using this. Now you have leverage within communicating. I don't want to put words into your mouth or make assumptions, but is this kind of what was going on?
100%.
Okay.
Early on at Pizza Fusion, like I doubted myself. I thought I was the dumbest guy in the room because there was guys in suits that were, a lot nicer than mine. And there were seasoned financial guys and seasoned, a guy was a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And, it was intimidating, and you get kicked in the corner and you think that's the right place to be.
It's weird though, because this is a perfect example of when I say, the more I know, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know shit. Because what you just described is what we should be trying to do. We should be trying to surround ourselves with people who are smarter than we are, right? Yep. But you did that, and it kind of beat you. But you didn't completely beat you. I'm sure you're profitable from Pizza Fusion. Like It just didn't end the way you wanted to.
Right. And it's funny. You talk about like I didn't surround myself with people smarter than me. People sort of surrounded me, which is kind of a different way to look at it. I didn't really have a choice. But now is a different story. Now is I'm picking and choosing who I want to work with, and I'm going to bed at night with no regrets. You know, there's a lot of things we'll always do differently, but I'm learning every single day. And you just said it yourself. I mean, I wake up every day and realize how much I don't know. And I'm a sponge and I just want to learn. And I talk to people like Danielle and my buddy Rocco, who's got a bunch of Rocco's Tacos down here. And, you know, I realize how much I still have to learn, and it's good to surround yourself. And again, I got to go back. My partners are amazing. So to be able to pick up the phone and talk to Scott 3 times a day is, you know, that's a valuable thing to have in a relationship.
I love it. So another thing, you just mentioned, you said it took 5 years from 2011 to 2016 to get Kapow Noodle Bar right.
Yep.
Can you take us through like a fast forward version of what those evolutions were, what those changes were, what those pivots were to get to that point? Like what things changed in that 5 years?
So I think we always did a really good job on the front of the house, the customer experience. We were really good at that, but we struggled with the back of the house. We were, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with not cutting corners from a culinary standpoint, where you're always trying to conserve money and you're watching the bottom line. So you're thinking that you can produce a high quality menu with a low quality back of the house team. And, you know, we didn't really put a professional chef. We had a bunch of amazing chefs come in and try and help us, but we never really had a true leader come in and just run the back of the house to where it was like the first day where Scott and I would wake up and like, wow, we haven't had to deal with any back of the house issues in a little while. And we realize how important it is to put the right people in the right positions, and you know, spend a couple extra bucks finding the right person. In hindsight, we realized we lost 10 times what we invested in the proper person for the job, you know, doing it that way. So, you know, again, I think it's putting the right people, let them be professionals. I don't want to be a chef.
Yeah. So you're talking about like paying a little extra, spending a little bit more. What incentives did you use to attract onto yourself this right person?
Well, I think for one, we hired outside of our comfort zone. We found somebody and we were planning on 5 units. We weren't talking about what are we doing with Kapow 1 and Kapow 2. This is far beyond that. We realized that if we don't start thinking like we have 5 Kapows, it's going to take us another 7 years to open up the next Kapow. So we had to have a professional that was seasoned come in that could lead kind of the back of the house. Almost at a C level, you know, that had the experience, that could understand the financials and run a kitchen properly. They could grow the team back there. They could motivate the team. So I think that's the one thing. The biggest thing, and again, like just start thinking big. You got to start, you know, put it out there that you're going to have 10 units, 20 units, and start acting like a big boy.
I love it. Anything we haven't touched on with Pizza Fusion or Kapow, big lessons that you know myself and my listeners will benefit from?
No, again, I'm going to go back to just you know, it's the people, it's the relationships that we have, and it's people, you know, the partnerships that you enter into them carefully. Realize what people bring to the table. You don't need 2 people that can bring the same thing to the table. Find people that are going to inspire you on a daily basis that you want to go work with, you're going to learn from. And then again, surround yourself locally with people that are going to help you out. You know, I'd say 10, 15 years ago, this industry was very closed off. No one wanted to help anybody else. It was everyone in it for themselves. Whereas, and I'm sure COVID didn't hurt this kind of culture, but I mean, I'll pick up the phone right after this interview, and I'm going to call 3 people and say, all right, what are we doing with this PPP money? What are we doing? You know, and to have those kind of mentors that aren't worried about you taking their business. And it's amazing. We're all sharing each other's posts on Facebook and telling our guests to go visit the restaurant across the street. And, you know, that's why we do this now. That's like to be here right now is fun. That's why I said, like, I'm looking forward to the future, and I'm actually really confident. You know, there's a lot of positivity in the industry right now. It's still a lot of crap, if you don't mind me saying that, but
no, but I think we are. What is the crap in your opinion, real quick? Where is the crap?
There's going to be a lot of collateral damage. Unfortunately, there are going to be mom and pops that aren't going to make it out of this. And a lot of it is because they don't have the mentors. They don't have the advice. They don't have the people to lean on to coach them through this, and the resources to coach them through this. So Yeah.
I love that you're saying this. And I'm 100% behind you. And I don't mean to toot the Restaurant Unstoppable horn, but when we say transform the industry, inspire, empower, and transform the industry, the biggest core value I would like to inject into our industry is this idea of shared knowledge and collaboration. If we create that as a standard, like that, help your neighbor out, talk to people, share knowledge, support each other, we're stronger together. And if we're on the same page and we raise the bar of the industry together, like, what would that look like? Like if we collaborate with people and we know our strengths, we know our weaknesses, and we work with other people to come together and be collectively stronger. Where's the bad in that?
Right. There's none.
Yeah. I love it.
There's none at all.
So
I like I said, like your show is one of the few shows early on, because you were kind of one of the trailblazers on this medium, to have these mentors that you like, wow, I've heard of that guy before. Holy cow. I can flip on this podcast and I'm getting knowledge like that. And I think these resources need to be, I don't want to say exploited, but they need to be shared a lot more.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't know what else to say, but thank you. So moving forward with, one other thing you mentioned earlier that I think is really important, I think we need to spend some time here, is this idea of diversification. Yeah. You don't put all of your eggs in one basket. You had your e-commerce. You have something we're going to talk about eventually, a new project with your friend and colleague, Danielle Rossi, yep. With sharing this knowledge. And we're here to help promote that too. But take us through this idea of diversification in managing all your portfolio.
Oh, wow. I'd like to think I'm managing my portfolio, but sometimes you just you're taking it day by day. Yeah. For me as an entrepreneur, somebody, I just look at opportunity, and sometimes, there's opportunity that interests me and some that don't interest me at all. And I typically pass up on things. My wife makes fun of me because every time I see a shiny object, I'm like, ooh, what we could do with that? And she's like, don't do it. Don't start another website or a business, please. But I identify with Dugan and Dame. We make cocktail tonics and bitters and things for the cocktail industry, the beverage industry. And that was something she was passionate about. And I saw how passionate she was and how talented she was. I mean, she's pursuing her doctorate in holistic nutrition, herbalism. So she's really big into this stuff anyway. And me being more on the business side of things, the branding side of things, I just saw an opportunity that was missing again with the craft cocktail movement, at the time, kind of exploding. There was a big opportunity for us being a local brand. A lot of people know us down here in South Florida. So we thought it was an easy opportunity for us to launch something like that. And as I'd mentioned, our primary consumers right now are restaurants and bars. So, we kind of, the faucet turned off 3 months ago and hasn't turned back on yet, or it just did. So we're happy about that. Obviously, other things that I have going on, you just kind of take it day by day, and you do the best you can. And I'm rebuilding kind of an internal management team so I can manage the quote unquote portfolio of things a little bit better. I've been a one-man show for the most part, with the exception of my wife and my other business partner in that. But you just take it day by day and you just start building a strong foundation. I think that's important. I think you have to also know when it's time to let go of some stuff and start.
What do you mean by strong foundation? What is the foundation?
Getting all the core pieces in place first, whether it's business structure, I think you have to get all the junk out of the way, the stuff no one likes to do. The tough conversations, like who's going to own what and who's going to make the decisions and how's the money going to be split up. And once you put that out of the way and you have real conversations about that, it's so much easier to run a business because it's all built on a foundation of knowing, trust. It's all in black and white. There's no lack of integrity because it's all there, to operate on. And then, like I had mentioned, like you got to know when to let go. You've got to know when you making things by hand is no longer the right way. It's me being the bookkeeper is no longer the right way to run the business. And you just have to know when to bring in professionals and other people to help support the growth.
I love it, man. Great stuff. So, man, there's so much we can talk about. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about how you reacted to COVID-19. I don't want to spend a lot of time because I feel like the time to react to COVID-19 is, I don't know if we're going to see another pandemic. Maybe this thing flares up. Hopefully it doesn't. I would rather focus on what you're doing for the future and how you're planning to adapt for the future and what you hope the future is, not necessarily how we react to what we think the future is going to be, but how can we influence the future? So let's start with, how did you react real quick?
So I crawled under my bed, I think right when it first happened. I was pretty scared. I didn't know what was going on, but as a leader with a lot of people that were kind of relying on you, you just take it day by day. You try and digest the information. And I think a lot of us also didn't think it was really happening. And you wake up Friday morning on the 19th or 20th of March, and you're like, wow, this is really happening. And what do we do? So, I have to, kind of give a little credit to my partner, Rodney. He immediately shut down most of the Subculture locations, turned one of them into a drive-up food bank to where any out-of-work hospitality workers could come grab a meal. And over the course of, the 2.5, 3 months, we converted 5 of our locations or re-employed over 100 people to make over almost 250,000 meals over that course of time for all out-of-work hospitality workers and other people. And other community organizations, we realized the need was much greater. And as it grew, we were supporting veterans homes, senior homes, senior facilities, because they were all in lockdown. And anyone that needed it, we were preparing meals for.
I love it. And it just kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is that well, let me ask, how much money were you making during all this?
Nothing.
Exactly. So just because the cash flow isn't there doesn't mean the business isn't still alive, because the business isn't defined by the cash flow. It's defined by the relationships. Yep. And you still have to manage relationships even though the cash flow goes away. And if you can do that, and if you can manage those relationships when the fog lifts, you're going to be that much stronger afterwards. People are going to remember what you did for them. Do you want to reflect on that?
Yeah. You talk about those partnerships. It was a really interesting time to find out who your real partners were as well. Like, you saw people rising right to the occasion. And look, this was a real thing. People were scared. I don't criticize anybody that stayed in their house and didn't see the light of day. It's a real thing for a lot of people, and we all handled it differently. But from a partner standpoint, whether it's through some of your food vendors and suppliers, your beverage partners, a lot of them stepped up right away. What can we do to help? And that was really heartwarming for us. And it made us realize that A, we've chosen the right partners. B, this is why we're partners. And this really is what partnerships are about. They know we're not making money. They shifted a lot of their business from on-premise to off-premise, but still had some funds to help out with things like buying meals for the hospital workers, the healthcare workers. And so it was just finding ways to get creative and continue doing what we're doing. For us, we wanted to keep people and bring people back to work. That was my priority, whereas, we also had to feed people. I didn't necessarily buy into it right away in the beginning, but then I saw the big picture really quickly, that there was a problem and there was something that had to be addressed. So we pivoted fast. We adjusted our business model as fast as we could. We were able to kind of reemploy some of our management, some of our key employees, and then slowly start bringing people back. And we started bringing some of our servers as volunteers, and just being around a lot of the staff as volunteers as well. That was really nice to see.
So one thing that is kind of a pet peeve of mine, I understand the significance of social media. I understand the significance. I understand that good social media is just opening the window, right? And letting people see your day-to-day and letting them be a part of your day-to-day. I get it rubs me wrong sometimes when you see people doing good and then shoving a camera in the process of doing good. And it seems like, are you doing this because you want to do the right thing, or are you doing this because you want people to see you doing the right thing? How do you find that balance? Because I noticed that you did document this. You did have a camera set up and, still like in fast motion, like capturing everything, but you did it tastefully. How do you find that balance of sharing what you're doing, but not coming off as somebody who's just trying to get likes and trying to pull on the strings of the hearts of your community?
There's simple answer. It's just integrity. I think that if you're doing something for the right reasons, people see right through the other way. We did it because even myself, like when I first went up to my partner's restaurant and saw the line of like 100 cars waiting for a meal, that was my eye opener. And I was like, people need to see this. People don't realize how many people need help. So we did it for that reason. We wanted people to realize, A, that we were there. First and foremost, like you had no questions asked. No one's going to ask you, about your free meal. Just show up, get a free meal. And I think it was important to get that message out. And, we live in a very kind of, a shareable world right now. I think some of us overshare. I think we chose to share just the right amount. It was really more for the cause. And again, it's integrity. You've got to just do it for the right reason.
I love it.
And not worry about what you're putting it out there for.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. It's a big pet peeve of mine when and I'm not calling anybody out by any means, but we did have a few local groups that would come off and drop off their, $200 check. And they're like, can we go get a picture in line with everybody? And I was like, well, you can help volunteer and hand out meals. Like if you're coming here just for a picture, I saw that a lot, and that really rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, man. And it's so all over the place, and it's just such bullshit. Pardon my language. And I'm not that active on social media because I see the bullshit. I feel my blood pressure rise when I'm going through news feeds. I'm like, bullshit. I don't know what my problem is, but I don't know. Anyway,
is there a button for that?
Yeah, where's the bullshit like button? Like bullshit.
He needs one.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. We got to talk back to this idea of diversification and sharing knowledge. And I think I have this prediction that I think consultants are going to be kind of like a thing of the past. And I got to be careful saying that because I don't want to piss off some of my consultant friends. But you're seeing more and more people just sharing their knowledge. And you're seeing more and more people, especially right now when we have to diversify and this idea of the pivot, right? Like, what are my strengths? How can I find another way to make money other than just doing the thing that I'm good at? Like, how can I teach people? And you're seeing it with master classes. You're seeing people, teaching how to make pizza. I think with COVID-19, all this idea of like creating content, sharing what you're doing, once COVID goes away, I don't think that habit of sharing knowledge is going to go away. And I think that people are going to start to monetize their expertise. And I think that it comes out with what you're doing with the boot camp, you guys, the hospitality boot camp you guys are putting together. Yeah. What is the hospitality boot camp?
So obviously, it all came to life because we all had these same questions. Like, how are we going to handle this money? How are we going to legally navigate our leases? And there were questions, even as seasoned operators, we didn't have answers to. So people started calling, Danielle, myself, and some of the local operators that are involved in this project. And they all had the same exact questions. So we found that if we could put up or put together a collection of local experts, each one of them in their field, whether it's legal, whether it's operations, whether it's, HR. We just wanted to put together the best of the best that we could find to help share this knowledge with people that needed it.
Yeah. So, and it's just the idea of being a person of value, right? And if you can do that, like, you'll be all set in life. If you can find a way to be of value and serve others, like, you'll be all set. And I love the creativity and the scrappiness of trying to stay relevant in a time where all of your businesses seem to be affected, right? You have the mail order and the restaurants, and like, you're like, shit, what am I going to do? And now, like, but you have experience and you know who to talk to, and you can help be of value just by connecting your network, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And like, I just love the creativity there. If we're interested in this boot camp, where do we go?
Ground Zero Boot Camp.
Got you. We'll link to this in the show notes. This is episode 719, and we'll be sure to link to that. You guys are selling for, I think it's like $600. Was it?
Yeah, it's $599, and I'm sure that you'll have. We can get you a discount if you're listening right now.
Yeah, I think that we already set that up. So if you guys are interested in this bootcamp, please use my link. I think it's Don't Stop. So we'll link to it in the and use promotional code Don't Stop. And one more thing before we take a break to thank our sponsors and go through the speed round. I want to pick your mind around technology. You said that one of your strengths is operations, specifically technology operations. So I think we should try to get as much out of you on that topic. I'd be silly not to. Yep. Like, what is your suite of technology right now? Get into it and why you made those decisions.
What's our suite right now?
Yeah, like, what's your suite of technology look like?
So we're using, for our POS, which is sort of the core of the business, we're using Toast. We gravitated towards Toast because it was one of the first robust cloud-based POSs that actually was easy to use. There were some other people doing it before, and there's some other technology out there that I'm sure is great, but that's who we kind of dove in with, and we've adopted it throughout the whole organization. I love the fact that it was a fairly open product that we could integrate with a lot of the other things that we were using. So I think, again, that was one of the big things, the big problems with Pizza Fusion is you can never get anything to talk to each other. We were never in a place with technology where the POS could talk to your marketing piece, and your onboarding and hiring wasn't talking to the POS. And so, we've actually, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what elements of the technology are you most excited about as far as which parts are talking well with each other?
So again, we're using Harry, harry.com. We're using that for everything from onboarding. So it's our full onboarding HR component where we're onboarding employees. We're hiring talent through there. We're pushing out job postings. It's also our scheduling software all in one. So it's great because, again, it maps like the journey of a team member from the time they apply for a job through the interview process. And it's all drag and drop. It's easy to use. So obviously from my dashboard, I've got all my team members. I've got scheduling. So you'll see here our schedule for the day. Tells me that there's people that are requesting some time off. So this is going to open up my schedule. It's got all the positions from floor managers, bartenders, servers. Everything here is really drag and drop. It's really easy to use. As I'm building out my schedule, it's telling me my labor for that position all the way down to the bottom, which has our labor for the entire day. Again, I don't want to speed through this too much, but you can see down along the bottom, it's got my estimated cost of labor. Because we just opened last week, it's not picking up sales data right now, but you can forecast your labor against your projected sales data, which I think is fantastic. So if you go back to the team, it has all of our team members here, and there's some personal information, so I'll fly through that. Yeah. This is interesting. I want to show you this really quick. So obviously with everything going on with COVID, this is a really unique feature that we've included where everyone comes in every day. They answer a series of 5 questions related to their health. So this shows like everyone's temperature that's been taken, that they've passed the temperature test, and they have to do this before they walk on the floor.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So the literal temperature.
Yeah, we have a laser temperature, and we take, everyone's.
So before you get into the next page real quick, I just want to reflect on this significance of opening up the channel of communication and using these tools to create that channel of communication, but also making it necessary or I don't know the word, required that you check in every day, right? And I think that was Mike Ganino said that the most important number you can track every day. Do you know what it is?
No.
It's like, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it's along the lines of like if we create like a scale from like 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, and your employee before they leave has to say like, on a scale from 1 to 5, how happy are you today?
Right.
And if you can give people an opportunity to give you some 2s or 1s or 3s, and those are red flags, go, what's up? Yep. And I kind of feel like that's what this feature is. Am I wrong?
No, it's definitely that feature. It's funny. I was using a kind of an online payroll company for a while. And that was one of the questions that they would ask your team members every week when it was like a survey. Like, how are you feeling on a scale of whatever, your happiness with work? Are you engaged at work? Are you challenged at work? And it was really insightful to get that information back. I think it's super important.
Awesome. So keep going, man. Sorry for that.
So yeah, really quick. I just want to go through the hiring component really quick because I think it's important. You'll see the 2 different Kapow locations here. One in Boca Raton. You'll see the active jobs that we have. You'll see the total new applicants.
Okay.
So if you click on the job, we can walk this person through the, that shows the job posting, but we can actually, I'll show you this really fast. You can see all of the new applicants over here on the left-hand side of the screen. Nice. If it's somebody I want to hire, I can literally walk them through the whole process of interviewing them.
So what are these? Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, this will open up my schedule so I can schedule the interviews based on my availability. They choose the time that's available for them. And then I walk them through the whole hiring process. And once they're hired, it handles all their onboarding documents, their I-9. They have to upload identification that we have to verify.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
And then we pass them right through to our payroll processor right from here. And then it also syncs directly with Toast. So that person already has an ID in Toast in our POS. And the last component of this, we use Harry for our clock-ins. So they come in, it's a facial recognition, clock in and clock out. We put parameters on how early they can clock in and how late they can clock out, which helps save money.
Yep.
15 minutes early 4 times a day is an hour. So
yeah.
pennies and nickels going out the door.
For sure. Some of the features you had there, one question I have 2 questions. The first question is, where are your applicants coming into this portal? Like, is Harry synchronizing with, like,
yes,
I don't know, like Glassdoor or
Monster? All of that, actually.
Okay.
Indeed. It actually integrates with Facebook now too. So you're pushing job postings through Facebook. And it's really interesting. And it also tells you when you're going through the applicants, you can also identify where that lead source came from. So it's
an aggregator at first, basically.
Yeah, 100%. And they have their own. So now that Harry's throughout, I think they're worldwide now, but you're seeing their own internal pool of people who now have downloaded the Harry app, who have applied for jobs at other restaurants in our market. There's an internal pool of like people that Harry kind of already have in their system. So it's pretty awesome. I can actually go over here to like the talent pool and look for people in a certain position in my market that have never worked or applied here before.
That's awesome.
So,
and the other question I had was around your calendar. Is this syncing with your iOS calendar or your Google calendar? Does it sync to both?
My Google calendar.
Okay. Awesome. Yep. This is great, man. Thank you. That's the first time we've ever done a live demo with a guest on the show. I appreciate that. I should do it more often.
I'd be happy to share it some more with you behind the scenes. I just wasn't afraid if there was like any personal info going out.
Maybe we can do connect after the recording to see if we can't do like another recording deeper. That'd be great. Yeah,
absolutely.
Harry's is recommended all the time on the show. I know Carrie Luxem from Carrie Luxem HR. She's a juggernaut in like the HR restaurant world, is a huge advocate of Harry as well. So I think any other things, actually, one thing before we take our last break to go to the speed round, a little bit about the future. What do you want the future of the restaurant industry to look like? I think we've been so reactive for so long that we've reacted ourselves into this corner, and we reacted ourselves into a lot of these shitty situations. How can we come back stronger? What things can we do better? What would you like to communicate about that before we go forward?
It's a great question. I can only speak about my personal experience with it and what I would like to see. It's given me and my partners the opportunity to realize what matters the most. So from the team members to the guest experience and the guest journey in the restaurant, we've been able to slow things down a little bit and realize what's important. And kind of like, again, like reset. You had a really big opportunity to reset and do things. Like if you weren't doing it right before, now's your shot to do it the way you want to do it or the way that you think you should be doing it. It's amazing hearing people talk about cleaning their restaurants. I mean, if you weren't cleaning your restaurants before this, that's another that you probably shouldn't be in the business. But, things like that. If you weren't treating your employees good before, you probably shouldn't be in the business. I'm pretty passionate about that stuff and it's important for us, but you get to realize that you can always do better. So for me, I just want to continue to grow as a person, as a partnership and as a business. And again, create like an environment for these people to work in to where we can all make money and we can all enjoy coming to work. If, we talk about quality of life a lot. And, if we see people working more than 40 hours a week, we don't kind of look down on it. We want you to go to the beach with your family. We want you to see your kids. So I just think that continuing down that path of kind of a more of a loving, giving, open work environment is really important. And I think that hopefully will trickle out into the industry as a whole.
I love it. The level at which the response of COVID-19 within the industry and these mandates and these regulations that are coming down on the industry, like say, for example, wearing gloves. You had some thoughts on that.
I mean, a lot of it comes down to, obviously, like you want to be the best you can be in terms of providing a safe work environment, whether, and if it means wearing a mask, like that's what we're going to do. Because we want to protect our staff. We want to protect our guests. What we're dealing with, like you said, there's a lot of misinformation on how to use gloves properly. And that was a kind of a big question we threw it on Facebook, like gloves or no gloves. And it was split right down the middle, but we figured out like no gloves is the right way to do it if it's done properly. Washing your hands, sanitizing your hands. I've got friends that are surgeons that are like, leave gloves to the professionals that need them. You guys should just be washing your hands and using gloves for specific applications. So that's what we adopted. But we figured out like a lot of this is optics to the guests. Like, what is the guest going to feel? So sometimes it's for show, and I hate it.
Well, that's the thing. And then I think, yes, it will, if there's shields and masks, it will reduce the level of transferring of the virus. I understand that. But at the same time, my big fear is that what we're supposed to be doing is communicating that it's safe, right? And everyone's doing this because we're being told we need to communicate to our guests that it's safe. But if everyone's wearing a face mask and everyone's got gloves on and there's shields all over the place, I'm not going to feel safe.
Yeah.
You know, like to me, that's communicating it's dangerous to be here right now.
Correct. Yeah, that does imply fear. And
you know, and my fear for the industry is that we adopt these as standards going forward. So, you know what I mean? And like, it's unreasonable in my opinion. And the burden is being put on the restaurant or the small business owner to have all these things available.
We're paying for it, you know. It's costing us a pretty penny. I couldn't agree more. And I think that it's a fine line for us, and we are walking it carefully because, again, there is that consumer perception that you have got to worry about. It's important. It's got to be a part of the conversation. So really quick, what we found, we were one of the first restaurants to get back open because we were already operating for the Hospitality Helping Hands charity work that we were doing. So we were able to get our kitchen open faster and, you know, just kind of clean it up and get ready to go. We had guests showing up at our restaurant that had never visited us before because it was one of the only places open. Some of those guests were on the older side of the spectrum who tend to be the most cautious about this. So they're the ones that seem to be picking things apart a little bit more, criticizing, going on social media, you know, measuring table distances. And
they should probably stay home.
I said that on an interview the other day, and I couldn't agree more. And I've got no shame in saying it. Like, listen, it's what's right for you. If you don't feel safe, don't come to my restaurant.
Yeah.
You know, go somewhere that's got picnic tables 40 feet apart until you feel safe. And then when you're ready to come visit us, we've got the tables spread apart. We're wearing gloves and masks for now. But I'm walking this line, and we're going to walk it backwards as we're allowed to, because as long as my staff is safe, and I think that's for me, that's where we're at right now. We've got the type of clientele who, I don't want to say they don't care about it. They're just happy to get out of their house. They're taking precautions, as are we. And I'm protecting my staff right now more than I'm protecting anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the vibe I'm getting. And the guests are okay with that. The guests see the steps that we're taking, and they know we're taking it serious, where other people aren't. There's people swinging from the rafters across the street, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at the same time, it's like we know ourselves as nobody knows ourselves better than we know ourselves, right?
Yep.
So if you're somebody who knows that you have an autoimmune disease issue, right? If you're somebody who know that you have high blood pressure, diabetes, and you're obese, and you're 50, maybe you should stay home. If you're 80 years old and have respiratory issues, maybe you should stay home. At what point do we not make people accountable for their own actions? You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's really the sad part. I think my first answer, my gut answer, is like, it's not my job. It's not my job to decide for other people. I can only provide what I think is safe based upon what information's been given to us and also required of us by the state, and people like that.
Yeah.
I cared a couple of weeks ago, and I shouldn't say care, I still care, but I used to get really worked up over everybody else's, what was going on in their life. And I can't do that. That's up to them. If you said it best, stay home. If you're not comfortable, go to your favorite restaurant first. Don't come to a restaurant you've never been to and criticize their practices. And
I've heard, and I need to publicly apologize to my roommate and my partner over at KC. I blew up on him the other day because he was talking about how there's lawsuits now. And people are suing restaurants for contracting, or bars for contracting a virus, getting sick in their restaurant. How can you prove that, number one? Number two, why did you go out? This is a risk you're taking. This is a risk that it just blows my mind. And I blew up on him. But at the same time, it's just like, you hear shit like that and you're like, how can you not blow up? How can you, this is so irrational. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are shaking their heads listening to us right now, saying we're knuckleheads.
They are, but they're probably, again, there's people on both sides of the spectrum. I get comments on my Facebook posts when I announce that we're open for brunch. There's like how dare you? You're killing people.
Yeah.
There's still people on that side of the spectrum, and I acknowledge that they're there, but I don't let it ruin my day. And I'm not going to let it ruin this industry getting back on its feet safely. But, I think there's a sense of resiliency that I haven't seen before in a time like this. Like, people aren't like the people I talk to, like the Danielles of the world, the Roccos of the world, my partner, Scott, we're extremely hopeful. You know, there's a lot of like, this is going to be fine. We're going to get through this. We're already getting through it, you know, and it's just a matter of now we're doing what we do best. Like, we're in the hospitality industry. Things change every freaking day.
And the first question I have for you is, what is your it factor? Habit, a trait, a characteristic you believe most contributes to your success?
Oh man, just my team. You know, I got to go back there. I have such great partners and such great people around me, and I'm just fortunate that that's my it. You know, it's my crew.
Yeah. What is your biggest weakness?
Patience. You know, I have a really, really long fuse, but it goes off really loud when it happens. I think I just could control that a little better. And you know, I'm an entrepreneur too. You want things done now. You just have to trust the process.
I love it. What is one question you ask or thing you look for when you're doing your interviews, when you're going through that interview process, when you're building your team?
Service versus hospitality. I always ask them to help define the difference. And if they know the difference between different types of tequilas, that's important too.
Don't ask me that question. Tequila's not my thing. If you want to talk about bourbon though,
all right.
I love it. What's one of your biggest challenges today?
Oh man, that's a great question. There's so many.
Right.
Spreading myself too thin. You know, I go back to, I love working with certain people and I can't say no.
Yeah. How are you overcoming that challenge?
I'm saying no. I'm getting much more. It's a lot easier for me to say no now because I realize the repercussion of it. And again, it's just trusting myself. I got to trust myself more.
One thing I've heard that I love around that mentality of saying no is for everything you say yes to is another thing you have to say no to.
Yep.
So be super selective with your yeses because you only do so much. So just protect those yeses with everything you have. Share one code of conduct or behavior you teach your team. This is a way to be, a way to act, a core value you teach your team.
I think respect for one another. That immediately translates to respect for the guests. You know, and just lead with integrity. Respect and integrity. You really can't go wrong.
Share one uncommon standard of service you teach your team. This is a way to be, a way to act.
An uncommon standard?
Yeah, one uncommon standard of service. So something that's common within the four walls of your restaurants, not common throughout the industry, to go above and beyond for the guests.
Ooh. You know, again, I can't really identify one thing. I think that we try and do everything differently, but I think it's storytelling. We like to invite the guests into our world. We like to ask them how we can improve. Did you see anything we can do differently? You know, I don't know where I learned that. I learned it recently because I think a lot of it, again, came to the surface with COVID. We want people to tell us where we can improve so they feel safer. But it's opened up all these other conversations with guests on how we can improve our business, which A, you can improve your business. B, you can get people away from social media talking about your restaurant and giving you a 1-star review. So I think it's really important to open that dialogue on the other side. We don't talk to guests enough.
What is one book that's a must read to make us a better person or restaurant owner?
Hands down for me is Setting the Table by Danny Meyer.
What's one more book?
Pour Your Heart Into It, Howard Schultz.
Yes, I love it. And both of those books, I'm pretty sure, are on audio. Head over to audibletrial.com/unstoppable to get your first audiobook on us for free. Are you an audiobook listener?
I am, yeah.
What type of game changer are audiobooks in your life?
Oh, I love it because like you, I'm on the go and I don't have, my wife makes fun of me. I'm really good at reading 3 chapters of every book.
But it's so, I mean, like I don't let not having enough time be an excuse to not educate yourself because we can do it easier than ever. It's just hit play and listen to or from work, at the gym, going for a walk, prepping in the morning. That's all time to be broadening your knowledge for sure. And again, audibletrial.com/unstoppable.
You're in my car. You're my car guy.
Nice, dude. That's really, it's weird, dude. I still think that I record these and put them on my media host and like nobody ever listens. So it's weird.
When I first started the podcast, like you were, because obviously I looked in the hospitality space. You were probably the first podcast that popped up.
That just means so much. Thank you for sharing that. What is one thing you feel restaurateurs don't do well enough or often enough?
Again, I think I've repeated myself a few times. Communicate with your staff. Open up that line of communication. Talk to them. They live there as much as we do, if not more.
What's the secret to opening? What's the secret to opening that channel of communication?
Just doing it. You have to break the ice. You got to sit down. You have to do it with integrity. You can't do it to go through the motions. You can't do it. They'll call BS so fast. And it comes down to integrity. Like they'll know that you want to hear from them.
Name one service you've outsourced. So not necessarily technology, but a person, a skill, a designer.
Design. I do a ton of design work. We outsource. Yeah, mostly that.
Is there one company you can recommend? The idea of this question is to help good people connect with good people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a longtime friend of mine, Joe Charamella. He does all of the branding and design work for Kapow, and it's really, again, brought us to another level. This consistency across 2 restaurants. We look like we have 50 restaurants. He's a former agency guy, and him and his company, Wheelhouse Branding, are doing a great job, and we've been using them for years.
We'll be sure to link to that in the show notes as well. And what is one technology you've adopted within the restaurant's 4 walls that's had a huge impact on communication, operations, profitability, anything along those lines? You've already mentioned Toast and Harry's. Anything else?
No, I'm gonna again. I'll mention Harry again. It's been really powerful to be able to, because we use it. It syncs with Toast, so we see our sales. We can forecast from it. We communicate to our staff when there's staff meetings. There's a communication portal, so it's kind of an all-in-one. It's our end-of-day manager book. You know, all the stuff that managers need to communicate, like the light bulbs being changed and whatnot. So it's been a game changer.
Love it. And this is the last question. It's a doozy. I think you know it because you've been listening to the show. If you got the news, you'll be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of your work in your restaurants will be gone, lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces that you can leave behind for the good of humanity and your legacy. What would those things be?
Oh, man. Lead with integrity.
1.
Have no regrets. I know it's kind of, but it is what it is.
2.
Just be a good human.
I love it, man. This has been great. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your story, to share your knowledge, to share your mentorship. We wrap up every chat by calling some folks out. So that's how we found you. Danielle called you out. Who do you respect and admire? Give me 2 names, 2 people that you respect and admire and believe would make a great guest mentor like you did for us.
Rocco Mangel for sure. Rocco's Tacos. I got to lean on my partner, Scott and Rodney. They're 2 individuals that could add a ton of value to your show. Scott, for sure, he loves doing these things. Rodney shies away from these things, but Scott, for sure, he's got a wealth of knowledge. And if you can get Dave Grutman on your show from the Groot Hospitality Group, he'd be another character to have on your show. He's a good guy. So it's Rocco, Scott, and Dave. Look out, guys. I'm coming after you. And then Rodney, if you're up to it too, I'll try to break that what's not extrovert, that introvert shell for you and get you on the show. And how can we connect if we're interested in maybe come joining your team? Maybe we want to bypass Harry's and just come work for you because we were listening to this episode, or maybe we're interested in this hospitality boot camp that you put together. What's the best way to connect? So, first and foremost, my Instagram handle is Vaughan Dugan, VAUGHAN. DUGAN, KapowNoodleBar.com, and then obviously Subculture Restaurant Group, which is sub-culture.org. You can learn a little bit more about all of our restaurants and what we do. And what's the website for the hospitality bootcamp? That's you caught me off guard again. It's groundzerobootcamp.com. And if you use promotional code Don't Stop, they'll knock 50% off that. Thank you so much. And that's going to us. That's going to Restaurant Unstoppable if you use that link, which supports us and our show. We're having trouble finding sponsors right now. I'll be straight up. People do not want to spend money in this industry right now. People are very conservative, and using our affiliate links really does support the show. So please keep that in mind when you are acting on the advice you're hearing in Restaurant Unstoppable. So again, thank you so much. There is no question, Vaughan. You are unstoppable. Eric, thanks, man. It's been awesome. I'm glad to be here. Cheers.
If you enjoyed this video, please help us out. You can do it by liking, sharing, subscribing, and hitting that bell icon. It really helps out. And don't forget, there's a complete archive of every episode with show notes at restaurantunstoppable.com.